Welcome to MyShliach Story Hour Chassidim series. Today we start a series on a new Chosid, a Chosid of the Mittler Rebbe, known as Reb Hillel Paritcher. There's actually a lot of very interesting things we're going to discuss and interesting stories and lessons we can learn about the life and the avodah of Reb Hillel Paritcher. Until now, we learned about the Chosid of the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shmuel Munkes. We heard a lot of different stories about him and what kind of personality he was and what type of Chosid he was. And one thing we have in common between Reb Hillel Paritcher and Reb Shmuel Munkes is both of them came to Chassidus Chabad on their own decision, something that they yearned to have a connection with the Alter Rebbe, and in Reb Hillel Paritcher's case with the Alter Rebbe and later with the Mittler Rebbe as well. Now, one of the greatest accomplishments, one of the unique things that stand out of the Mittler Rebbe's Nesius was the establishment of the various different kehiles in the Pale of Settlements. What's the Pale of Settlements? Around the time of the Mittler Rebbe, Tsarist Russia decided that the Yidden could only live in a certain side of the country. And they made a whole section where the Yidden are going to live, unless you had exclusive permission to live elsewhere. And the Mittler Rebbe, and later on the Tzemach Tzedek, found it very, very important to be mechazik the Yidden living in these areas. And Reb Hillel Paritcher, that we're going to learn about, was tasked with this job to uplift the Yidden in these areas. And Reb Hillel Paritcher was the Shadar, a personal messenger of the Mittler Rebbe. Now, one of the jobs of a Shadar was also to collect money, and the money that was collected was to be given to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would decide how to give out the money, what causes to use it for. But one of the unique things we're going to learn about Reb Hillel Paritcher was that the Mittler Rebbe gave him the authority to decide what to do with those funds. Reb Hillel Paritcher is, I think, the first chassid that we are aware of that Pasha gave himself over, beleven nefesh, with total avos Yisrael, to his fellow Yidden. And he did this to help every Yid that he can, whether it was the Yidden living there, whether it was the Yiddish soldiers in Tsarist's army, for 45 years, until the day that he passed away. Reb Hillel did everything possible to help other Yidden. The notion of sending tzaddikim to pick up the spirits and uplift the spirits of other Yidden began already much earlier with the times of the Baal Shem Tov. We know that the Baal Shem Tov sent around his Talmidim to other cities to uplift the Yidden. There was something unique about Reb Hillel. First of all, he was given the responsibility to uplift the spirits of a Yidden of an entire region, not just a shtetl or a few shtetl, it's a whole side of the country. Also, the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov usually they came as simple people. We know that the stories of Reb Zusha Anapoli and Reb Elimelech, before they were misgalit to become big Rabbeim, big Rebbes in their own right, they were simple people, and they would simply, in their quiet way, uplift the Yidden and inspire them. But here, Reb Hillel revealed the greatness and informed, ready from the other people, already knew what type of special person he was right away. Reb Hillel left such an impression on the people that he influenced that for years after his istalkus, people were still in awe of his greatness. And because of that, because he helped so many people, we know a lot about his life, more than other Chassidim that lived in that town. Another thing is that although Reb Hillel Paritcher was involved with Yidden of all calibers, Yidden that knew more, Yidden that knew less, Reb Hillel Paritcher never compromised. He never lowered his standards. And for us, Shluchim, it's something very important to keep in mind also in our Shluchis. Mishnah tells us, when we're korvan laTorah, and we're going out to help somebody and teach someone Yiddishkeit, we have to make sure that we're bringing them closer to the Yiddishkeit, closer to the Torah, and not chas v'shalom compromising or changing or not being careful in our Shmiras HaMitzvahs in order to benefit somebody else. This is something the Rebbe spoke a lot about. It's very important on Shluchis to remember that we're bringing people closer to the Torah and to Yiddishkeit, and not chas v'shalom farkeret, that we're making the Torah convenient. They say a story about a shtetl that one time got a brand new Sefer Torah, and the people of the town made for the Sefer Torah a beautiful mantle. You know, the coat, the cover that goes around the Sefer Torah, it's called a mantle. And the belt that goes around the Sefer Torah is called a gartel and a mantle. Now the mantle, the coat, the cover of the Sefer Torah was too small. So when they put it on the Torah, they sewed it a bit too short that part of the Sefer Torah was sticking out on the bottom. So some chacham in the town decided, we're going to cut the Torah down to size so it'll fit nicely in the mantle. Chas v'shalom, you can't do such a thing like that. You take off the mantle and you redesign it and you sew it in a proper way that it can fit on the Torah properly. Same thing over here. And Reb Hillel was a master of this. He never, ever, ever compromised. He never lowered his standards. At the same time, didn't make others feel bad, but he knew that as a chassid, this is what is demanded. As a yid, this is what's demanded in Shemiras HaTorah v'Mitzvos. Let's first go over a little bit of the history and the biography to get an idea of who Reb Hillel Paritcher was. Now, Paritcher was not his last name. I don't know if Reb Shmuel Munkes' last name was Munkes. I don't think it was. But as many people in those days were named after the cities that they came from, Reb Hillel Paritcher was known as Reb Hillel Paritcher because he came from, you guessed it, the city of Paritch, but he wasn't born there. Reb Hillel Paritcher was born in the year 1795. And his name was Reb Hillel Halevi Molisev. His father, Reb Meir, was a Rav in the city of Mel, Ukraine. Now, today, Ukraine is one country and Russia is another country, but in those days, it was all basically one country. And they weren't Chabad Chassidim. His father, Reb Meir, was a Chassid of the Tzaddik Reb Menachem Nochum of Chernobyl. They were Chernobyler Chassidim. One time, when Reb Hillel was 2 years old, his father wanted Reb Hillel, or Hillel as he was known at the time, because he was a little boy, to see his Rebbe, Reb Menachem Nochum. And Reb Menachem Nochum of Chernobyl was coming to this town, wherever they were, and you could imagine when a Rebbe comes to town, thousands and thousands of Chassidim from the neighboring villages packed into the street in order to get a glimpse of this tzaddik. And we know what the Rebbe tells us, that a person that has the opportunity to interact with a Rebbe, or to see the Rebbe, or to hear from the Rebbe, that moment, that experience that you see the Rebbe leaves an indelible mark on your neshama, and it helps you in your Avodas Hashem for years to come. And that's why it's important for us to look at a picture of the Rebbe, to watch videos of the Rebbe, to listen to farbrengens of the Rebbe, because that is chakuk in our neshama, and it gives us keach to continue our avodah and our shlichus. And Reb Meir wanted his son Hillel to see his Rebbe, Reb Menachem Nochum, but because it was so packed, everybody came to give Shalom Aleichem to the tzaddik. There was no way he was going to see. So Reb Meir decided he's going to pick little Hillel up on his shoulders, very, very high, and hopefully the 2-year-old boy would be able to look over the crowd and see the Rebbe, his Rebbe. Right? You can imagine, take for example Tishrei in 770. The place is packed. If you're a little boy and you want to see what the Rebbe is doing, there's no way you could see. So if your father or someone picks you up on his shoulders and you're soaring above the crowd, you're able to see over everybody's hats and jackets like kapatis and talesim, and you're able to see the Rebbe. So the mayor picks up Hillel and he looks over the crowd, and all of a sudden, the 2-year-old boy starts crying, Zisha, Zisha, which apparently means fire, fire. Fire, there's a fire. There's got to be a fire somewhere in the town. He's standing on a higher, position than everybody else, so he can see there's a fire. Where's the fire? Where's the fire? Everyone starts looking around, but they don't see any smoke. So they say, Hillel, Zoguns, tell us, where's the fire? Where's this fire? We want to go call the fire department to put it out. And the little boy points to the tzaddik, Reb Menachem Nochum. Although Hillel was only 2 years old, he already was able to see the Shechina. He was able to see the Helikite around this Helikit Tzaddik, hovering over the Helikit Tzaddik. Can you imagine? A 2-year-old boy looks at a tzaddik. He never met him before. Probably never saw a picture of him before, because there were definitely no cameras in those days. Probably never saw a painting of him before. But the first time Reb Hillel set eyes upon the tzaddik, Reb Menachem Nochum, who was his father's Rebbe and his own Rebbe for a little while, which we'll talk about in a moment, he was already able to detect the Helikite emanating from the tzaddik. Now, Reb Hillel was known, as he was growing up, as a big, big Talmud Chacham. Already before his bar mitzvah, listen to this, he already knew the entire Shas, Shisha Sidri Mishnah, Gemara, Poskim, and he knew Kabbalah, and he was learning how to daven with the kavanis of the Arizal. By the age of 15, today there would be a Mesifta Bacher. He was already so well versed in many Sifrei Kabbalah that the Chassidim would say that the neshama like this boy of Hillel, besides his neshama and the neshamas of the Nesiya Yisrael, such a neshama did not come down into this world for the previous 300 years. Could you imagine that? A 15-year-old boy knows Gan Shas and Poskim and Kabbalah. And if you think about it, you might think to yourself, the whole Mishnayos, how could I know the whole Mishnayos? And the truth is, Kindalach, you could know the whole Mishnayos. Not only could you know the whole Mishnayos, you could also know Tanya. And not only could you know Tanya, you could know Tanya and Mishnayos Baal Peh. How could you know Tanya, Mishnayos Baal Peh? I'm not the Reb Hillel Paritcher. Listen to this. MyShliach has this awesome, amazing program. Mishnayos Baal Peh, MBP. And we're starting in a couple of days. In Beis Cheshvan, it's time to sign up, and you get your automatic welcome package with a surprise gift. You have to listen to this. Listen to this. In your MyShliach account, when you log in, the lines of Tanya and Mishnayos Baal Peh that you learn, and the time spent learning the Tanya and Mishnayos Baal Peh, you accumulate money, real money, Pashat Gashmi's dike Geld, like cash money that can be used in the MyShliach store. And in the MyShliach store, you got unbelievable prizes. We're talking about prizes like scooters, footballs, jewelry, books, svarim. I'm telling you, these mamash sets of svarim of Shulchan Aruch, of Tanakh, of the Frierdiker Rebbe svarim, like probably Lachluchis Sichos also. I mean, like, Kamat the ganze kahos you can get in that store. And you get two things at the same time. Number one, you get to learn Tanya Baal Peh, you get to learn Mishnayos Baal Peh, and you're on the road to learning Gan Shas Baal Peh, Mishnayos Baal Peh, and Tanya Baal Peh. And then, once you already know this knowledge in your head, when you walk in the street, or you're on a plane, you're on a train, you could chazer over the words of Tanya, Mishnayos Baal Peh, and you do Taras Ha'aver, like the Rebbe tells us in Ayem Yem, many, many times. And you're walking on the street, you're riding the subway, you're able to make the ear around you halik. So don't miss this opportunity, Chevra. Sign up for the awesome MVP program by Beis Cheshvan, and you're going to get this awesome, amazing welcome package that comes delivered to your door. I can't tell you it right now, but trust me, you're not going to regret it. So sign up, take out the Tanya, take out the Mishnayos, and get knacking. Couple of minutes a day, chazer, and it's going to be unbelievable. Now, Reb Hillel Paritcher was known for a little while. They used to call him the Chalamoid Yid. Chalamoid Yid? It's a Chalamoid Yid. It's a Yid only on Chalamoid. What does that mean? Listen to this. How do we daven on Chalamoid? Chalamoid, the Tatis daven with a talis, and the Bachrim don't put on tefillin. On Shabbos and Yom Tov, you don't put on tefillin. And our minig is also on Chalamoid, you don't put on tefillin. Some people have a minig to put on tefillin Chalamoid also, but we don't. That's a discussion probably for a different time. Now, the only time you would see somebody during the week wearing a talis without tefillin is Chalamoid. Because Shabbos you wear a talis, and a regular Shachris during the week you wear talis and tefillin except for Chalamoid. Reb Hillel was known as a Chalamoid Yid. You know why? Because during the week he wore a talis, but without tefillin. Why would he wear a talis without tefillin? Because Reb Hillel Paritcher got married before his bar mitzvah. Could you imagine? He was very mature. He's a big Talmud Chacham. He got married probably around the age of 12 years old. And because he was married, he wears a talis. Someone that's married wears a talis. But he wasn't bar mitzvah, so he didn't wear tefillin. So he would show up to the minyan. He was too young to be part of the minyan, but he was married, so he was wearing a talis, but he wasn't wearing tefillin, and it was every day of the week, so they called him the Chalamoid Yid, because every single day he looked like it was Chalamoid for him, wearing a talis without tefillin. let's talk about the story of how the Shidduch of Reb Hillel Paritcher came about. So, when Reb Hillel was 12 years old, everybody knew that he was a big, big goyin. And we already spoke about how much he knew, just a little bit of how much he knew. And one day, the big gvir, the richest man in the town, every town had a gvir, and probably every town also had a shikir also, but now we're talking about the gvir of the town. And he comes to the shatchen, the person that makes the shidduchim in the town, and he says, Mr. Shatchen, do me a favor. I want you to go to Reb Meir, who's the father of Hillel Melisiv, and tell Reb Meir that I would like to arrange a shidduch between my daughter and his son Hillel. I mean, there'll be a big schus for me that my daughter marries the biggest goyin, the biggest Talmid Chacham, such an edel person in this town. So the Shatchen comes to Reb Meir and says, hey, Reb Meir, I have a shidduch for your daughter, for your son, sorry. You see, the big Vir, the rich man, he told me that he would like his daughter to marry your son, Reb Hillel. I think it's a good idea. You won't have to worry about the Chassidim because probably the Gvir is going to pay for everything. Now, Reb Meir wasn't such a big fan, wasn't of this idea of his son, Hillel, marrying the daughter of this big Gvir, for whatever reason. On the other hand, he didn't want to make him feel bad, because this Chassid, this Gvir, was also a Chernobler Chassid. So Reb Meir tells him like this, I'll agree to the shidduch, but there's a Tanai, the deal is that the rich man has to pay my son, Reb Hillel, a big nidunya, a big nadan, a big dowry. What's a dowry? In the olden days, when somebody would get married, part of the conditions of the arrangements for the chasna, besides for getting the kala gown and buying a ring and setting up a place for the chasna and cooking the food, and sending out invitations and buying a kapata and a gartel and a talis and all that, the father of the kala would give what's called nadan, or a dowry. Would say a certain amount of money I'm going to give to the young couple to start off their life. So if it was a rich father, if the kala came from a rich family, so it would be a big amount of money. And if it was a poor family, it would be less amount of money. And a lot of people would try to marry into rich families in order for them to get a big nidunya, a big dowry, so that the young couple wouldn't have to struggle, at least not in the beginning. Now, Be'emes, Reb Meir wasn't interested in the money, because he knew that Reb Hillel licht in hechrin yonim. He's not interested in gashmis. But he wasn't so keen on the shidduch. So to get out of it, he said to the Shadchan, do me a favor. Go back and tell the father of the kala, tell the gvir, that I want a dowry on a dunya of 20,000 rubles. 20,000 rubles. An exorbitant amount of money. Chevre, let's see if this condition of 20,000 rubles was a hindrance to the shidduch. Did it go through? Or did the father say, not a problem, let's do it anyways? Let's find out about the shidduch of Reb Hillel Paritcher in the next episode.